am going to just put in a quick plug that if you have not been listening, you don't have to go back because these are all standalones, but we have now covered our introduction, our physical health, our mental health and well-being, and now we're on the spiritual / soul parts of our whole health journey.
I love it.
Good morning.
Good morning, Turkey Tots. Happy Tuesday.
I thought there was something on my eye, but there was something on my screen.
I hate when that happens.
I know. I was like, where do I touch? Anyway, how are you this morning?
I'm doing great. It's a good Tuesday morning. I'm happy to be here talking to you and continuing on our semi-selfish summer series. Part 3. Technically?
Yeah. Spiritual / soul wellness.
That's a big one.
It's a big daddy.
And man, we've realized that these topics go very deep, so we should just jump right into it because I feel like we could talk forever about this stuff. As per usual, I pulled up a definition since I've been doing that for the last 2. So it's been really interesting because I didn't look up soul stuff because I feel like that's a little more woo-woo and we can get into that on the side. But when I looked up spiritual health, I got some really good definitions. It's basically it was a couple websites where they kind of lumped in everything together. It wasn't like from Wikipedia or Webster's Dictionary because they didn't really have that in there. They had spiritual as a definition, and I really did not like it. So I'm going to start with that one first because we can talk about how I don't like the definition of spiritual. It's relating to sacred or religious matter. I'm like, well, that's kind of boring and lame and it doesn't really do it justice. So I will just move past that and tell you that when I looked up spiritual health, this says it's a dimension, which I liked, a dimension of human wellness that integrates all dimensions of health: physical, emotional, mental, and social. Spiritual health creates meaning in life, cultivates altruism and ethics, and is based on individual perceptions, convincing us of our abilities to survive. I mean, hit or miss at the end there, but then another one, I'll just skip down to it, basically said spiritual health is a facet of the self that connects us to something larger than the person. And that's what struck home to me, and that's where I fit into this. But I'll stop there, and that's what the interwebs say.
Your last one is basically what I had as my definition. Although here I'll just read from my Nerd Alert book. My Nerd Alert journal book.
Wait, is that a unicorn?
Yeah, it's a unicorn in space.
I love it.
Eyeballs. I find weird journals places and then that are on sale. Anyway, I don't care as much about the outside side tangent as I do of the texture of the paper and how my pen scrapes it. So I put health, having a healthy soul or having a healthy spirit defined as feeling and knowing that I'm connected to something bigger than myself and a knowledge that it also connects us to each other.
I like that second part because that was not in that entirely. And that makes a big difference.
That's always been my thing, like up and out. Just, it's not the Kaylee show. I think that's what it boils down to.
It's like, we're all the same egg inside and we all come from whatever you believe in, whether that's a god or a universe or just simulator masters. I don't know. We're all in this together in this crazy world. So I like that part.
I liked the red definition that you had where it talked about that the spiritual belief fosters altruism and ethics, which I think that ties into we're connected to each other. There's some, and I guess to jump right in, I believe, and I think it's healthy to believe that there's some type of, again, higher power, bigger calling, higher purpose. I kind of like to think of it as some kind of, divine something, but there's something that kind of guides and moves and directs us. And we all have a little kernel of that within ourselves. And it keeps you, I think it keeps me grounded. It reminds me it's not the Kaylee show. And then it reminds me that everybody is equally as important. And it prevents me from thinking I'm better than anybody, because we all have that little piece of something, like our soul. We all have that something intangible within us.
Yeah. What if it was the Kaylee show, though, and you're like the new Truman? Just kidding.
It's too early in the morning for that level of paranoia.
No, I agree with you on a serious note. I feel like you could be in the top physical health. You could be very mentally stable and in a good mind, mindset. And I also think you could have good community. I feel like community is probably the closest thing to spirituality if you had to separate those. But you could have all the things in health and wellness and be okay, but you could still be at a place where it's like, okay, I'm great living here on earth, but what happens when I die? Like it's scary not to believe in something and believe in something like divine and bigger than you, to know that we're not all just, it's kind of depressing if you just think we're all on a spinning ball traveling this huge universe and there's nothing bigger than us. It almost doesn't make sense. And I know this episode's going to get all the comments on YouTube. Just hold your panties. It's fine. But we're just having a conversation. It's comforting to me knowing that there's something bigger at play and that we're not alone. And I personally, just to dive into that a little bit, at this moment, I believe in God. And I also believe there could be a heaven and hell, but I also potentially toy with the fact that there could be reincarnation. No one ever freaking knows until it happens, so relax again. I do believe in God, so I don't need saving. But just knowing that there's something more and there's not so much pressure on, like, obviously be a good person and live the life to your fullest, but it just takes off a lot of weight and stress that this is it. Like, I'm just going to be null and void after this life. That's terrifying.
I think it gives purpose, higher purpose or a higher calling to our life now. If this is just it and it's just for us to look out for ourselves and do the best for ourselves and then die, I can get very dark. And what's the point? What's the meaning of life? What's the point? It's just, what is the point if it's just I'm going to go to work and then collect my pennies and then go back home to my box and then spend my pennies on myself? And it just, if there's nothing else, and even if you don't believe in a higher power, I think just again, fostering that sense of I'm small, the world is big, and I'm connected to the people around me. I think that for me has been something that really makes me feel grounded. It makes me feel at ease because, again, when I'm in the midst of something that feels like a really big problem, I'm just this little tiny microscopic speck in the span of history and even in the scope of just this one planet within this one constellation. And it sort of helps me remember that it's not that big of a deal. It feels really big right now, but in the scheme of things, it is not that serious. I don't want to go into my whole history and my whole life of everything, but we can just, I guess, share briefly kind of where we came from. Because I grew up in your not maybe traditional, but an evangelical home, Christianity, Western Orthodox, American, that whole jib jab. And I think in a lot of ways, again, having something to name God, having something that I could specifically point to, I think was helpful for me growing up because it provided some level of stability and some sense of self that was constant and not dependent upon other people. And I think that was really, really healthy for me and probably really healthy for kids to just have this sense of my value and my worth is not tied to other people's opinions of me or my performance in school or in sports or my family. It was something that I felt like I could have as a steady foundation. And that was definitely healthy. I have since moved on from some of the formal aspects of religion because I think there were a lot of unhealthy things in some of the churches that we were in. And it just kind of put a bad taste in my mouth. So I kind of stepped away from a lot of that, right or wrong. It just is what it is. But I have realized in the last couple of years, as I've gotten my physical health and my mental wellness and some of those other things in line, that there was sort of still this piece that was missing that I needed to tend to. And so in the last year, I would say year to like 2 years, I've been looking for ways to have more of a spiritual practice and sort of tend to my soul a way that I haven't in the past. And I realized that was definitely a big key piece for me of, preventing burnout at work. Just kind of keeping a sense of awe and wonder and just appreciation and gratitude for what's around me. And that has been something that was definitely missing. And I have realized now that I've started to implement some of those practices that it makes a really big difference in just that whole pie chart of what being healthy means.
Definitely. I agree. When you were talking, I was imagining, it kind of hit me as, we're these people with these skin suits, as I think you said a couple weeks ago, and we have to take care of that with our physical and mental well-being and health. But once we leave this earth and this life, wherever we go next, there is an actual soul, like a spirit within us that we also have to tend to, because that's what's actually carrying us around.
Mm-hmm.
And I do agree with everything you said as far as putting in those practices, which we'll get into in a little bit. It's interesting though, because I never really heard you say your perspective on you growing up in that kind of evangelical type of like environment. Mine's a little different now that you just said that. I grew up Catholic. We grew up very Catholic, which no problem. I don't go to a Catholic church now, but it was less of, hey kids, this is why you should feel better, put you at ease, give you confidence. It was like, these are the verses that you learn. This is what Joseph and Mary did. This is what, it's all the education, which does serve a purpose, but it did not give me what I needed at that age. Up and down, kneeling, sitting, standing. I didn't really grasp what we were doing. I do like that I had that foundation, but I can't say it served me well as far as my soul back as a kid, because I didn't, the power of whatever you want to call it, spirit, or if you want to call it religion, or if you do subscribe to church, like that's fine. I was not getting that as a child. So when we ended up going to a different church that was quite different, maybe on the opposite side of the pendulum, it kind of opened a new world for me that I did love parts of. Whereas like there's worship and there's more of a relationship with God and communication. You didn't have to do all the stupid stuff like standing, sitting, kneeling all the time. And that kind of opened my eyes. And that didn't also last either, because I feel like we both kind of found a middle ground where when I moved to Texas, I will shout out Young Life back when we were in high school, because we've talked about this before, but that was extremely, extremely beneficial. And I think that is the first place that I actually felt confident in myself, because I was able to get into a relationship with God. However woo-woo that sounds, that was a turning point for me in my life and my confidence when we were younger. Long story short, though, after college and I moved, I was kind of hopping churches and trying to try out new churches here in Texas, and nothing really landed. And now that I've gotten older, I don't believe that I have to be in church to be in relationship with God or be spiritual or be connected to my soul, if that makes sense. I would love to go to church and bring my child to church, but I don't think it'll be like every Sunday we're going to church and you're going to go to CCD like I did, and you're going to get your confirmation and you're going to do all these things, because that sometimes doesn't do what we would like it to do. It's not fostering, the beneficial pieces in some people. So I also have other practices that are outside of the church that don't maybe look traditional, but I think are good for our spirit.
Two things of what you said. The Young Life thing, I sometimes forget to shout them out, so I'm really glad that you did. But for people who don't know what it is, it's a faith-based Christian organization, but it's not a church. So it's an organization for kind of like a youth group and a model, and it's very non-denominational and very accessible. And the reason I think that it works and that it was so transformative for us is that it's mentorship. It's older Christian adults mentoring younger kids, and then it's community of kids together. And it was neat because we all went to different churches and had different backgrounds. And there were a lot of kids too that I think were not really involved in a faith or in a religion, but it was just to go and have fun and again have that support of other adults. That was huge for me too. And just the community and the friendship and being silly and a judgment-free zone, but just to have that experience, I'm really, really, really thankful for. And the other thing, when you were just talking about, a soul and there being something intangible about humanity, the two biggest things for me that were really confirmation of that I think have shaped some of my ways that I look at the world were being present shortly after someone gave birth. The air is different in the room. And I'm sure when you're the one birthing, there's a lot more going on. But we went to visit my sister-in-law and my nephew, and Jason and I were dating very shortly after he was born. And I remember walking in the room and just there's just kind of this moment of awe. There's this person here now with us in this new life. And that was really crazy to me. And I felt like something kind of shifted, or there was just something almost sacred feeling about that space and that moment. And similarly, having been present when someone has died, there's a shift. There's just a different feeling as someone takes their last breath. And it's interesting because that body is still there, but the person is no longer. And I don't know if people, the whole open casket, and I'm sure some of it is that it looks not like them because of the heavy amounts of makeup they have to use to make a body look presentable, and the, preservation and all of that. But I still, shortly just after someone passes, when you see their body, there's an intangible thing that's not there anymore.
Yes, there is a lack of spirit. I completely know what you mean. It looks different. It feels different.
And that was always the biggest thing for me, because I've had the pendulum swing of very religious to very anti, and it was some of those things that kind of brought me back to this middle ground of saying there's something, at least I believe there's some kind of something within us that is more than just our skin, sack, and bones. To me it's comforting. And, I don't have all the answers. And I think that things will probably change as I change and as I have different experiences in life. But no matter where you come from and what you believe and what makes you feel connected to something bigger than you, I think it's important to figure out what it is that gives you that sense of awe, that gives you that sense of wonder, and find ways to implement that in your life as a way to maintain your own spiritual health and to enrich your own soul. Because otherwise, we're just wandering around, I think, untethered. And it is maybe a little bit woo-woo, but I do go back a lot to thinking that a lot of mental distress and physical distress has a lot to do with just us having soul wounds that we're not tending to.
Or, yes, I 1000% agree. And I'm not going to get on this tangent because we have to stay focused today. But I feel strongly that there's some things within us that are triggers from either childhood or past lives that we need to. I know, dude. Maybe, honestly, on my goal list, not this year, because I promised myself I would go to therapy as an EMDR, but to go on a step further, I'm hoping to eventually try to find, don't come at me in the comments, please, but a regression therapy, like hypnosis therapist. Well, the words didn't come out right, but you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because I would kind of love to just see whether that's like childhood trauma that I just am unaware of that I've suppressed and they can help me with that, or if I can find someone who can maybe will just like peek into my subconscious and see if there was any past lives. Dude, I would find that so extremely like helpful to understand. People say, oh, if you have a fear of heights, it's because you probably like fell out of a building in your past life. And that's a bad example, but I just do feel like there's more to the soul, whether we reincarnate or not. There's something more to it that when you are untethered, you don't really know how to find and fix and mend and just feel whole and connected. That's all I'll say.
I could feel your excitement.
I just, it makes sense in so many ways, but I don't know. No one knows except the people who have all these stories. And then it's like, there's so many stories. How do you not believe it? I don't know.
I know. And then there's side tangents about ghosts and presences.
Purgatory and
I just find all of it. I find all of it so interesting. And what I love about our friendship is that both of us just are nosy and curious. And I think that it's so healthy to just say, what if this is true? And then just follow that rabbit trail for a little while. And I hope that's how I keep moving through life. But I can't say enough about how important it is for people to explore this part of themselves and their belief system and to unpack some of those things. And if you've had religious trauma or if you've had a great experience in church, it doesn't matter. I don't want to ever be somebody telling people what they should or shouldn't do, except for maybe joining a very small subset of people who want you to give them all your money, because then it's probably a cult. But
don't do that.
Figure out what that stuff means to you. Figure out what makes you feel full and what makes you have that sort of sense of abundance instead of feeling scarce and running from thing to thing all the time. What makes you feel grounded and what makes you feel connected to people. I am so much kinder when I believe that everybody is interconnected than when I think that I am the star of the show.
Yeah.
And it's not healthy. It's not healthy to think that the world revolves around me. That's nonsense. And it's not true. And I have to implement things to keep myself in a space where I remember that I'm just a little blip on the radar of humanity and the universe. And then I can take a deep breath and just keep moving forward.
Exactly. I agree with you. I agree with you on everything. And excuse me, do you want to jump into some of the spiritual practices that we've done or do? I feel like I made a list of things that people could do besides going to church or, joining a Bible study. Like those are the the straight and narrow things that I don't know why I said it like that, but those are the traditional routes you can take. But I don't do all of these currently at this moment. I have dabbled in all of these, but I do want to refocus on some of these that I can do to kind of foster my spiritual well-being, if you would say that. So,
yeah. What do you do? I guess, well, maybe what do you do that works for you? Or just go through your list and then kind of note what you do or what is working.
You mentioned earlier having gratitude. And I never really put that together, but when I was physically writing down at least 3 to 10 things I was grateful for every day. And that was huge. I do also feel like that's goes into mindset and eliminating like scarcity mindset and just turning on the positivity receptors. However, I also think it's huge for spirituality and knowing, look at all the abundance that I have in life and how much I should be grateful for. So gratitude practice is and was huge for me. I do it more mentally now, and I was telling you months ago how when I put Caden to bed, I'll ask him like, what are you grateful for? And we'll kind of talk through it, even though he doesn't talk yet. But I need to get better at that. The other thing is I used to meditate. And that's also a very interesting topic that we don't have to dive into today because we probably don't have time. Some people think meditation is good and some people think meditation is bad. In the realm of spirituality, I think that it's great because it calms my brain and allows me to be more connected. But I'd like to do that, but I think music is a huge thing. Music and nature. There's more on my list that we can get into, but for me, those things really hit. Some music is not spiritual, obviously. Some music just pumps me up. And I will say that depending on the frequency the music is made in, it actually could negatively affect us, which is very woo-woo as well. But I know I'm going off on so many tangents today, but good music that vibes with your soul, as in good vibrations, aka good frequencies, really does make a difference in being out in nature, seeing what God or the universe has created for us, and really appreciating that and getting out of being right here on our phones and just being out here and being in the quiet. it unlocks something in me that's, I don't know how to explain it. You know what I mean, though?
Mm-hmm. Those are definitely, I was going to say, those are definitely mine. The way I framed it when I was kind of journaling through this was, what helps you tune in. And I just love everything that has to do with frequency and tuning. And I like that language for describing, because these are really hard, almost intangible things to discuss and describe. So I think metaphors are a great way to do that, because we can connect more easily to a metaphor than to just words flinging around. And because I do think that there is just something divine that exists and then exists within us, I like the idea of tuning in and settling to that. I want to give credit to people where I'm taking these words from, but I can't remember the authors because I've read a lot over the years on some of this stuff. But talking about your divine knowing, and just because, or that intuition or your gut or whatever that is, if you can calm and quiet all of the buzzing around you, I think of it like taking my head out of the beehive.
Yeah.
And get quiet, just that sense of, okay, this is the next right thing. And for me, very similarly, a lot of those things are music. I wrote that feeling when the church choir comes in at the hook of a song.
All the ladies in the background. Give me a good lady chorus in the background. I'm jiving.
Yes. Like the song's coming and then the big crescendo. There's something, like it moves you. So definitely music. For me, lyrics and words are a big part. I can kind of pick and choose what I'm listening to, but there are some songs. We went back to when Oliver Anthony had his big, American anthem that blew out of the water last year. You know what I'm talking about?
Mm-hmm. Was it last year?
That song,
Yeah.
I felt like something spiritual happened. It struck a chord with, I think, a wound, like a soul wound that a lot of our country was experiencing. And he put into words, I think, what a lot of us felt. And then you could feel it in the tone and the depth of his voice, the truth behind it. And so for me, there is just fun flim flam music. And then there's other music where you can feel the songwriter connecting to the words. It's interesting because in that time they were probably having a spiritual experience writing it, and it's crazy how that can reach across time and space and then touch you in the same way. I love that about music. Nature, obviously. Jason and I've realized, have sort of semi-intentionally celebrated a Sabbath by doing something outside on Sundays and taking that time to just sort of be quiet and slow down and cook dinner together and spend time together and just not make ourselves busy on Sundays. And I love the intention of that. And the times that we go out and just walk in the woods is so restorative to me, and getting into spaces where I feel small. So being at the Gulf, where you just look out and there's just this massive expanse of water and the tides and just how all of that stuff and the moon connect. Just, I love all that shit. That is great. I love being in the mountains and just, again, looking at this massive pile of rock and just reminding myself that I'm this tiny little dot. It sounds morbid, but like mostly insignificant. But it's like, if I'm insignificant, then this problem is insignificant. I don't know. I like it. It feels good to me, even though it sounded kind of depressing the way that I said it. So that is definitely a big one. And then yoga meditation, something like that, where again, I'm quieting the outer buzz and I'm just being in the moment and available to receive information, dive into my own knowing, or however you want to word that. And then where you were saying gratitude was a big one, which I 1000% agree. I have recently felt like creativity, which I keep harping on, but I just feel like creativity is such a similar thing. I feel like this little antenna, and when I get quiet and when I make space to play and have fun and give myself room to be creative, I really feel like I process shit and things come out. And writing has always been an outlet for me, but I'll get randomly into painting. Or I have dogs with me today. I'll get randomly into painting, or, dabbling around in piano, or plunking around on a guitar. Just those different ways where you sort of get you get into a flow. And I don't know how else to describe it, but that has been something for me that feels almost like an act of worship and has been really beneficial for me as well, as a way to fill myself up, to feel fulfilled, to reconnect with that sense of awe and wonder. And those have been the big things that I have started doing, because without it, I realized I just feel stale and dry and crunchy and bitter and brittle. And when I get like that, I am not flexible, and then I am not resilient. And then the smallest little thing makes me have a come apart. And obviously, we were talking about mental wellness and well-being last week. And I think it's important to know that while these are all different facets of our health, they all interconnect and they're all correlated and related. So if your spiritual wellness is lacking, then your physical wellness is going to be affected in some way, and your mental wellness. I don't really think that we can be truly living our full potential or feeling like we have an abundant life until we get quiet and figure out how this piece of wellness can be tended to. And I think a lot of us forget.
So easy to forget. I think this is I don't want to, well, I do think this is the most important aspect, because I think if you can tend to this one, it'll help tend to the others. They're all important, but this one really, I mean, especially if you believe in afterlife, this one's the most freaking important, because we have to go somewhere after this. But I liked what you said, and I 1000% agree. It's all interconnected. I lost my train of thought, but yeah, I agree. The other things that I wrote down, if what we just said didn't connect to anyone, I was looking kind of up some things, and I didn't really think about mantras, but I guess mantras could kind of be spiritual.
Yeah.
Just reading, whether that's not, you don't have to read the Bible or the whatever spiritual book you believe in, but just reading other types of books. You already said yoga, and I was thinking journaling and creativity, which you touched on, which I agree. It's almost like you're a rod of, like you said, your creativity and flow, which is kind of connecting you to just being quiet and letting creativity flow within you, which I think is definitely spiritual. And then if you don't want to, if you're within the realm of, believing in a God, and I don't want to say religious because I don't like that word, but if you don't want to be praying, I remember when we were in some of our younger years, people would just say, like, you don't have to pray. You don't have to worry about saying a perfect prayer. You can just talk to God, or you talk to Jesus, or talk to the universe, or talk to the trees when you're in nature. Just communicate with something to help you feel connected. And it obviously, unless you do hear a voice say something back to you, I've never heard that, but just knowing in my soul that I am talking to a higher entity and a divine being that's bigger than me, it gives me a self of safety and security and just love and comfort, I guess. A relationship, if you will. So
yeah. I think another good thing to do that can help you kind of foster the sense is acts of service. So volunteering or getting involved in some type of an organization. I think I do get some of this fulfillment in the work that I do at my job, so I might be using it as a crutch. But again, just reminding yourself that we're connected. I go back to my love of skeletons. I mean, we all look the same when you peel back the couple layers of skin, and we all have for a very long many moons of humanity. Just get out there and connect, plug in to something. And if it's Christianity and a Sunday service, awesome. If it's even Catholicism and you feel really connected through some of the rituals and the traditions, great. If I don't know what you do in some other religions, but I mean, I know Islam has a lot of practices and different traditions, same with Judaism. And I think a lot of people who feel connected out of the ritual and the community of that ritual and other people participating in it with you. Eastern practices with meditation. I would argue every religious practice has a meditative component. And the Christians can come at me in the comments, but go read Psalms and find out about David. But just something that quiets you down and decreases your input, and then doing something for somebody else as an output would be, I think, two good aspects to look at, and find something that works for you in each of those categories.
I love that. It's perfect.
And this week, to wrap it up on just the tip,
That was perfect.
I am going to go back to the same thing I've been harping on. So for those of you who have been listening, I'm sorry for you. And for those of you who are new, it's called The Artist's Way. It's been such a cool journey for me. It's like a 12-week program. There's reading, there's exercises, there's challenges on how to foster your creativity and sort of get out of your own head and explore your belief system and spend time playing, just all of those things. And for me, some of those practices and some of that exploration really got me back on track to say, okay, I've got to tend to this aspect of myself because it has been sorely neglected. So we'll pop a link into the show notes so that you can click and order it if you want. Check it out, read about it, see if you like it, and let us know what you guys do to tend to your soul.
I love it. Happy soul and spiritual wellness, Kaylee. I need to go walk outside now.
I know. Just take a couple deep breaths outside and okay, listen to the birds. All right. Well, I love you. I hope you have a good Tuesday, and we'll see you next Tuesday, you turkeys.
Love you, bye.